Good morning, Friday. I'm Gretchen Ho. It is the 23rd day of May, bringing you Morning Matters because your mornings matter. Let's get to the stories that matter today. President Bongbong Marcos orders a major shakeup, calling for courtesy resignations from all cabinet members and key officials. The Senate officially notifies the House of Representatives that the impeachment court will convene on June 3 for the trial against Vice President Sara Duterte. Pre-trial hearings will run from June 24 to July 25, with the formal impeachment trial set to begin on July 30. And atin ito, coalition gears up for a historic sea concert promoting peace in the West Philippine Sea. Let's discuss this later on in the program. Welcome to our program, Morning Matters, where we talk about the issues you need to know for the rest of your day. Now, first on the agenda, President Bongbong Marcos has ordered a sweeping shakeup in his administration. The president has called on all cabinet members and key officials to submit their courtesy resignation. Here is the report.
The entire presidential cabinet is now at risk of being wiped out. President Bongbong Marcos has requested a courtesy resignations of all cabinet secretaries, agency heads with cabinet rank, presidential advisors, and assistants. One of the reasons behind this decision, the results of the recent Bilang Pilipino 2025 survey.
Sa kanyang paningin, nakulangan siguro ang taong bayan sa naging performance ng gobyerno, kaya hindi nila nakuha yung pinaka-target na numero, especially sa Senado.
According to the palace, there is no room in the administration for lazy or corrupt officials.
This is not about personalities. It's about performance, alignment, and urgency. Those who have delivered and continue to deliver will be recognized. But we cannot afford to be complacent. The time for comfort zones is over.
Members of the executive department quickly responded to the president's call. As of Monday night, over 30 cabinet officials have expressed intent to resign or have already submitted their courtesy resignations. Among them is Executive Secretary Lucas Bersamin, Tourism Secretary Cristina Frasco, and Transportation Secretary Vince Dizon were among the first to issue statements.
We all serve at the pleasure of the president, and it is a privilege to serve our nation.
As his people who he has handpicked to help him, we are duty-bound to follow that. Itong ginawa ng presidente ito, itong mensahe niya, nabasa ko yung statement ng Malacanang, hindi lang serving at the pleasure of the president. We serve at the pleasure of the people.
The president has yet to grant a formal interview on the matter, but he addressed it lightly during a speech at Malacanang earlier today.
The honorable members of the cabinet. Teka, may laman pa ba yung kabinete ko? Who am I addressing now?
Political analyst Edmund Tayao believes there may be deeper motivations behind this cabinet shakeup.
Alam mo, medyo matalinghaga yung move na yan. Ano? I mean, whether it's knee-jerk or what have you, being a president and you're talking of the whole government for that matter.
Despite the ongoing shakeup, Malacanang assures the public that government operations will not be affected. Even after tendering their courtesy resignations, officials will remain in post unless the president formally accepts their exit.
A few senators expressed support over President Marcos's move to purge his cabinet. Senate President Chis Escudero views it as, quote, a mid-game substitution, a reshuffling of key players based on their performance. He thanked the president for acknowledging that there is a problem and for displaying sensitivity to the sentiments of Filipinos. Meanwhile, outgoing Senator Nancy Binay also lauded the president's decision. The new Makati City Mayor is worried, though, of what the courtesy resignations could do to current government projects.
Ang concern ko is baka wag sanang maantala yung mga programa. Sana kung may tatanggapin siyang courtesy resignations, yung kapalit nandiyan na kaagad.
Some former government officials and groups in the business community have also stated their reactions.
A number of factors, no? The Iglesia vote, the Duterte votes, and also the disenchantment with the president himself because it seems to be nothing's happening. So this is a refresh, no? You refresh everything.
We like these guys. We think they're the best people for the job. These guys are well qualified for the position, so we would be very surprised if Marcos accepted their resignations and let them go.
The Senate has formally advised the House of Representatives of the impeachment court convening by June 3. Here is the report.
On Thursday, House prosecutors began discussing preparations for the historic trial of Vice President Sara Duterte.
We resumed our meeting after the elections and we discussed the letter of the Senate President sent to the House of Representatives that we will present the articles of impeachment on June 2 before the Senate. I guess we will present the articles of impeachment during their session.
As stipulated in the Rules of Procedure, the House Prosecution Panel has to present to the upper chamber the articles of impeachment. Senate proposed to do this on June 2 at 4 in the afternoon. House Prosecutor Bel Zamora said 5 to 10 law firms are helping them with the trial. And at this point, they are 90% ready.
A little exciting for us, I guess, na matutuloy na. We've had a mock trial before. We prepared judicial affidavits for the witnesses. We examined witnesses. We're reviewing all of the documentary evidence that we already have on hand.
By June 3, the Senate will convene as impeachment court. Pre-trial is set to begin by June 24 until July 25, while the impeachment trial proper is expected to start by July 30. VP Duterte earlier said she is ready for the impeachment trial.
Don't go away. We'll be back with more stories right after the break. Good morning, I'm Gretchen Ho, and here on Morning Matters, we talk about the most pressing issues and give you the context behind the headlines. Two unfolding political events are at the center of the national discourse. President Marcos has requested the courtesy resignations of all cabinet secretaries, aiming to recalibrate his administration following the 2025 midterm elections. Concurrently, the Senate is set to convene as an impeachment court on June 3 to address multiple charges against Vice President Duterte, including graft and constitutional violations. Let's discuss these developments further. We have political pundit Richard Heydarian joining us on the show today. Welcome to the program. Welcome back, Richard.
Good morning. I'm not sure if pundit is an upgrade, but I'll take it for this morning.
Sige, lagyan na lang natin ng resident political pundit. Slash analyst, slash ano ba, vlogger. All right. Okay. Major moves of the president right after the midterms. There were two. One, of course, is that BBM podcast where he made a lot of pronouncements. And the second one is this cabinet revamp. Let's go first to the podcast. What do you make of the posturing towards reconciliation? I mean, to be honest, right after everything that had happened in the past months with the arrest of the former president, with the impeachment and the remarks against the vice president, it kind of surprised me that he took this turn, signaling or posturing that he needed more friends and not enemies.
Well, I think the two moves are very much related. I think they're part of one single major gesture, which is the president trying to say, okay, I got the message and I'm going to act accordingly or respond accordingly. Perhaps the debate right now is whether that response is proportionate or whether the response is appropriate to begin with. Ang basa ko kasi dito is when it comes to the podcast itself, for instance, the choice of the person who interviewed him, the choice of the range of issues they covered, and also this emphasis that is open to reconciliation to the Dutertes, and that, what people are looking for is positive messaging and all. He almost sounded like a candidate during the election. He sounded more like, I don't know, Bamakin or Bongo during the election, right? And my sense is, of course, he's right to think that the success of top two candidates, whether it's Bamakin or Bongo, is precisely because they focus whether on malasakit issue in the case of Bongo or on education issue in the case of Bamakin. But my thing is that as the president, who was at the receiving end of an underperformance, to put it mildly, I just felt this was not the best way for him to communicate his recognition. I think the way it came out is as if he's saying, okay, we got decimated here. And I think what's happening here is an overcorrection, whereby he's signaling rather than decisive introspection. I think what he's signaling is perhaps weakness. That's how it came off to me, because I felt that is not what you wanted it to come out from the podcast. What you wanted to come out from the podcast is, first of all, to say, I'm not a lame duck. We didn't do as well as we do, but we can do better. And in next years, these are the things I'm going to do to make sure that the Filipino people will appreciate my administration. I just felt that yung mga parang aside lang niya began to really dominate the conversation, because the reconciliation discussion with the Dutertes was, I think, was something that stood out, and was something that the Duterte side and a lot of critics actually carried out of this podcast to say, see, the president is already taking out the white flag. See, the president is almost a lame duck. See, the president is accepting that he suffered a major defeat. And now you have the other side actually, smelling blood. I mean, Senator Bato de la Rosa said that he has to show extreme sincerity. What does that mean? Do they want concessions on the potential ICC warrant of arrest against him? Sara Duterte earlier said that she's open to a bloodbath, meaning she's very confident about how the impeachment is going to go. So I mean, half jokingly, I said maybe as part of the cabinet reshuffle, maybe now he's open to rehiring Sara. Maybe Sara will finally get the part of national defense that she was. I mean, I half jokingly said that, but if you push his reconciliation argument to its logical conclusion, why not, right? Why not just put some Duterte people in your cabinet and everything will be love, 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 and everything's fine? I just felt that was not the best message that he could have sent at this point. I honestly, the message he should have sent is to say, yes, we didn't do as well in the Senate, but nevertheless, my allies dominated in the Congress. Nevertheless, we won most of the gubernatorial and mayoral position. Nevertheless, we have sufficient number in the Senate to, at the very least, to push for what I believe is the right agenda for the country. And then, of course, yes, he's free to say, I respect separation of powers at wala akong kinalaman sa trial na yan, and just leave it at that. What we see from this president is he keeps on throwing a wet blanket on the Sara impeachment trial issue, which I think is, again, excessive. He should just distance himself, but not throw a wet blanket when some people are worried that what could happen here is that maybe a trial will not happen, or that the Mickey Mouse trial may happen. So I just felt overcorrection is happening here rather than a proper response introspection.
Do you think he realized that the Duterte base was too valuable to lose? I mean, with the 2028 in sight and him not having a strong successor at the moment, is this him trying to regain that base for political alliances heading into his last 3 years? Or is this his personality just showing that he is just too nice, as discussed in that podcast, na sinasabi nga na there is that perception that he may be too nice, and he said that he wants to be respected, but maybe fear is better. Which of the two do you think it is?
Well, I mean, we can talk about Machiavelli for the next hour and have a lecture on Machiavelli, that sometimes you need to be a fox and sometimes you need to be a lion. That's absolutely correct. I mean, I think as far as President Marcos Jr. is concerned, I think he has to accept that one of the reasons they didn't do very well during election is precisely because there was a lack of effective response to two major criticisms from two different camps. The first one was yung criticism galing sa mga liberals and progressives ukol dun sa issue ng ayuda, PhilHealth, and supposed questionable practices in the budget ahead of the election period, basically weaponizing the budget to serve the Alianza campaign. I never heard really a decisive and convincing response on that front. So they were already pinned down on that front. And then the ICC issue happened, And then what we saw was there was no follow through. There was no convincing narrative by Marcos or his deputies to really to say that this was a legitimate move. This was in the national interest. No, they just wanted to shove it below the rug and hope that the machinery of the state and everything will carry the day, and that the buduts and the names and all of that will be enough. Well, guess what? It was not enough. So I think that should be more of the introspection, that there was not a significant effort to deal with those major criticisms from both camps. And guess what? Those two camps did well. Number one went Bongo, number two went but almost number two, and then number two was, of course, Pam, and number five was Kiko Pangilinan. Only one from Alianza was in top five. So that means there was not effective response to that. The second thing is, the campaign of the Alianza, was it run effectively, right? Were the candidates doing the best they could to push the agenda of the president? I remember very well, in fairness to President Marcos, when he opened the campaign in Lawag, he was very strong talking about corruption, alleged anomalies of corruption, Farmali. He talked about West Philippine Sea, na kami ang Team Pilipinas, hindi kami tuta ng China. He talked about extrajudicial killing, etc. And then what happened? There was no follow-through whatsoever. So my point is, maybe he's over-reading into, I don't know, this meta-narrative na baka ang gusto ng tao is I'll just, fold over and just let the Dutertes have their day. I think that's a wrong way of reading it. Maybe you should have more tactical understanding of what went wrong with your campaign. Maybe your campaign team did not do well. Maybe you didn't extract enough from your candidates. Maybe you didn't have the best combination of the candidates. After all, maybe some of them were towards retirement days rather than towards a re-energized campaign. So, yun ang concern ko dito, na I think President Marcos Jr., rather than looking at tactical factors that may have contributed to their underperformance, not total defeat in the midterm elections, what he's doing here right now is essentially he's getting the white flag out. And exactly, going back to what you said, if you want to go Machiavellian about it, I don't see either fox here nor lion. I see an owl here, maybe the owl of Minerva and wisdom and introspection, but he's still president, and he doesn't want to be a lame dog. But he is like showing that he's worried that he's going to be a lame duck, and that's why he's doing all of these things. So again, I just don't think it was optimal. I am sure people will disagree with me. There were people inside government who disagreed with me, but I hope they understand where I'm coming from on this issue.
Well, it does seem that the actions in the past months were irreversible. I mean, in terms of restoring the relationship of the Marcoses and the Dutertes, but he failed to take the bull by the horns, as you mentioned. He failed to follow through on that. But what should we expect from this podcast? That's episode 1. What is that move all about? I mean, is this him trying to be more accessible, communicative? What is he trying to do here?
Well, I mean, from what I understand, without spilling too much beans, because I had some conversation with some folks, I think some people were hurt when I said that maybe ang dapat mag-resign yung mga people who did his strategy and communication. So maybe some people were hurt. I didn't mean it in that sense. I understand where they were coming from. I think they wanted to send this message, positive messaging. Well, it worked for BAM, it worked for Bongo, maybe it will work for us. I get it. But my point here is, I think the way forward is President Marcos should realize that he was not in the battlefield of narrative building. As I mentioned a while ago, panalong-panalo sila, Bam and Kiko, and basically the progressive, in pushing a certain narrative of good governance. Panalong-panalo mga Duterte camp in pushing this solidification of support after the ICC arrest of former President Duterte. So nagraling around the flag effect sila. Bongo did best because he kind of had everything behind him, and that's why he did very well. So how should he respond? He's not going to win this battle of narratives by withdrawing from it, nor is he going to win it by one podcast episode with one person and then hoping that will be it. Okay, game over, okay na, palitan ko yung cabinet. No, I think this should be a beginning of a new series of communication strategies. And perhaps there has to be more podcasts, more spontaneous discussion, maybe podcasts with different kinds of people, maybe experts, maybe legitimate journalists like you, Gretchen, people who will ask him, well, not necessarily hostile questions, but questions that will bring out the best in him. kung saan magkakaroon siya ng oportunidad para i-explain sa ating taong bayan na okay, nakakulang kami sa first 2-3 years at ang dahilan dyan is daming hidwaan, I did my best, but sana sa mga susunod na mga taon, yung mga ibang kaibigan natin, even if they're critical, sana hindi sila mag-destabilize, sana hindi sila maging source of chaos and conflict, etc. Because let's not forget, the reason we have political polarization is not BBM, right? The reason we have political polarization is because the Duterte perhaps never accepted Marcos acting as a president. They thought he will just be the puppet. They thought he'll just be the front. And once Marcos acted like a president and pushed for his own prerogative, you have former President Duterte questioning him. You have all of these attacks on him, personal attacks on him, as cocaine user, supposedly drug addict, attacks on his family. I mean, let's not forget the source of instability and chaos is not from President Marcos. He's the one who always trying to bring things down in terms of temperature. So I think the way forward is not only positive messaging, but also reminding people why we are having this situation. But nevertheless say, I will do my best to focus on the issues that matter to people, infrastructure, etc. Siguro he should focus in the coming years also on the issue of yung subsidized rice. Diba? Siguro hindi niya magawa na lahat ng mga bigas ay 20 peso kada kilo, but yung pilot project na ginawa nila sa Visayas, for instance, close to the election period, gawin nila across the country. So I think they can do both. You can combine positive messaging and sasabihin mo ayoko naman ng away, at the same time also defend yourself at sabihin mo hindi naman ako yung pinanggalingan ng away na yan. And then at the same time, of course, do not signal weakness. Because Gretchen, let's not forget, the trial may happen, but whether the trial will be a Mickey Mouse trial or a legit trial, it will depend on how the majority in the Senate are going to calculate this. And this is very, very important. If BBM thinks that the pinks, whether it's Risa, Bam, and Kiko, are gonna carry the day. If BBM thinks, okay, outsource lang natin ito kay Leila de Lima and let Shell Jokno carry the day, and then maybe something good will happen, it's not gonna work, right? They just don't have the numbers, right? So this really goes down to the centrist senators, including some who were part of his allianza, but now they're gonna think about their own political interests. DT signal enough decisiveness and strength to convince the centrist senators that they should risk their own political capital, if not worse, by having the trial to begin with or having a legitimate trial. Because yes, I think it's quite hard to see if there's enough numbers to convict Sara Duterte, assuming there's a preponderance of evidence. But there could be enough senators who could be convinced to hold a robust enough trial that at least exposes the preponderance of evidence and alleged abuses. Because alam mo bakit, Gretchen, Sara may not get convicted, but she may end up so exposed by a legitimate trial that will render her politically no longer viable for a presidential run in the 2028. And that could still serve the interests of either the president or other critics of Duterte. So that's why it's important what he's signaling to the others. So I know his messaging was sa taong bayan, but guess who are the people who immediately released a statement in support of his reconciliation proposal? The very people who don't want the trial to happen or have been debating what's the meaning of forthwith 6 months na, diba?
They don't want to decide, of course, or to take sides, right?
Multiple audiences here. You cannot choose your audiences. And the centrist senators, people who don't want to risk any... they are watching President Marcos and saying, well, he's giving up the fight maybe. Why should I risk my neck here? And let's just get over with this.
Well, decisiveness and strength it is. He has asked his whole cabinet to resign. What do you make of this move? Is that common in the midterms to have a revamp like this of this scale? And does that show strength, in your opinion?
Again, I think that's an overcorrection. I mean, I think there are definitely certain people in his cabinet, or depending how you define cabinet. Is Solicitor General a cabinet member? Like, why is the DOJ Secretary of Duterte still there, right? No offense to, with all due respect to Solicitor General Menardo Guevara, we clearly know that his position is contrary to the position of the president on key issues like the ICC arrest of former President Duterte. Why is he still there? So maybe it makes sense for some of these people to resign, right? Or no longer be in his cabinet. But I have talked to some of these cabinet members who are extremely competent people, whether it's in the Department of Energy, for instance, whether it's the Department of Foreign Affairs, for instance, my goodness, even Department of National Defense. I don't know, baka bibigyan niya na kay Sara finally yung DND na yan. Who knows, right? Anything is possible nowadays. But do you get what I'm saying? Like, I just felt this is a little bit overboard. But if this is the optics he wants to project and he feels that that will show decisiveness, so be it. Pero para sa akin, ang mahalaga dito is Department of Agriculture because mahalaga yung issue ng food security. If he feels that the Department of Agriculture is not being run competently, yes, go for a change. If he feels the Department of Finance did not do well on the field health issue or making sure that the budget is allocated proper to certain welfare projects, maybe he should look at that. But I don't see any serious problem with other departments, whether it's DND, Department of Foreign Affairs, Department of Energy. I've met some of these people, whether it's, maybe NEDA, which is now, of course, National Development Department. They miss their targets. Is that because Secretary Balisacan is not competent enough or because of other factors? So again, I think, this is, I think, too performative, in my opinion, even though it makes sense for some of the cabinet members to indeed be reshuffled. Let's not forget, the DOTR was just changed recently. So fresh in the work lang yung current Department of Transportation Secretary. And actually, I think he's doing a fantastic job in terms of at least projecting leadership and decisiveness. Maybe he can also a thing or two.
Education Secretary is also new.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So again, at the end of the day, the buck stops with the president. You know, the Italians always say, the fish rots from the head. So if you want to convince the people, you cannot just rely on spokesperson, on your cabinet, all artful egos of the president. It's important for the president himself to shape the national narrative. Alam mo bakit mahalaga yan, Gretchen? Because we had 6 years of Rodrigo Duterte who every night was doing istorya, right? That completely changed the dynamics of what people expect from a president. I have lost count of how many people I've talked to who said, na-miss namin yung mga araw na si Tatay Digong pinapakinggan namin. Kahit hindi kami nag-agree sa kanya, nakikita namin yung pagkatao niya, yung emotions niya, sobra kasing relatable si Digong. I would say Digong was perhaps the most effective rhetorician, maybe not the effective speaker, but rhetorician we have ever had in recent history. He could connect, and he would connect. He would give like talks every night almost during the pandemic, right? So coming from that, for Marcos, you're not going to win the day with just one podcast episode, which in my opinion was not actually the best one. I think he has to do more of that, maybe podcast with different people.
Richard,
or conversation people like you, for instance.
do you agree that this administration focus more on politics? Because sa sinabi nga ni BBM, the people are tired, obviously, of politicking. Do you agree with that this administration focused on politics? I mean, taking a look at the happenings at the ICC, isn't that also something critical? I mean, when it comes to the conversation about social justice here in the Philippines, getting justice, what are your thoughts on that? And also, ano yung mga sticking points dito sa kanyang SONA na tingin mong kailangan ng ma-address in the immediate?
So yeah, I think basically what I've been arguing is that he's evading the fundamental issue, right? So sabi ko yung dalawang issue which really cost the Alianza, aside from maybe campaign weaknesses or composition of the Alianza, is that hindi nila sinagot yung dalawang malaking tanong, diba? Kasi kung sinasabi natin politika daw, what does it mean? There's an assumption na may abuso nangyari or may mga bagay na nangyari na parang sa tingin ng mga tao ay parang mali, right? So isa yung
the budget,
ayuda, yung budget, yung PhilHealth, yun ang kailangan niya explain. Mali ba yung nangyari? Tama ba yung nangyari? Ano ba nangyari dun sa mga pangako niya na magkaroon ng tapat na gobyerno at saka epektibo na gobyerno? At yung pangalawa, yung issue ng ICC, what was he hoping? That ilagay mo si Digong dyan and then suddenly people will just forget about Duterte and move on? Of course not. I mean, Duterte base is roughly 15 to 20%. And then it exploded to 40% in at least some of the surveys. Because that means a lot of other people who are not hardcore Duterte supporters bought into this Duterte line na kinidnap si Digong, kinawawa si Digong, na walang basihan yung ginawa sa ICC. So I don't know how the cabinet reshuffle and saying reconciliation and all is gonna deal with the fundamental concern here, which is he did not answer bakit tama yung ginawa sa ICC. Bakit walang mali dun sa budget.
There was no strong statement or strong hand
I think he
in
has
that.
to respond to those issues in his State of the Nation address. And now that he's going into his legacy years, he also has to go on the positive messaging and say, XYZ, itong gagawin ko. At kung may mga bagong, sabihin natin, cabinet members na pagkagaling, emphasize niya anong gagawin nila sa mga susunod na taon para hindi lang siya hindi lame duck. He's going to be an effective president with a fundamental legacy.
And even bringing the 20 pesos a kilo rice does not seem sustainable to everyone. I mean, it is being distributed across different Kadiwa stores in certain parts of the country, but people don't believe it is actually a permanent solution. But speaking of legacy, on a final note, what do you think does BBM need to do in the next 3 years? How does he consolidate back his power, apart from the things that you mentioned, of course? But there is no clear successor in sight. How does he, strengthen his rank, his forces heading into 2028? And how does he cement his legacy?
Well, I mean, he has multiple options, right? And none of those options are ideal, right? One option is stick to someone close to him who may not be as popular, right? We can talk about maybe Speaker of the House, Martin Romualdez, who's very close to him. Maybe he will maintain his position as Speaker of the House, but based on the surveys, he may not be the most ideal candidate, at least for the presidency. The other option for him is to form a tactical alliance, let's say, with anti-Duterte forces from the pink or progressive opposition. But then again, there are going to be tensions and problems with that. It could split both ways. And again, it's not very ideal because, let's say, he supports the run of Riza Hontiveros or run of Lenny or Pam. Nothing will stop these people from pushing for good governance and inevitably looking into alleged anomalies, not only under Marcos Jr. but also under Marcos Sr., right? And then so on and so forth, right? And then if he
How
cuts
about the
Duterte-
Tulfos? How about the Tulfos?
Exactly. So if he cuts the deals with the Dutertes, I think, what is he gonna do? Bring back Duterte from ICC? I mean, what is he gonna offer them, right? To as recompense for that? And then absolutely, you meant as you correctly mentioned, I think the fact that Erwin did not top this Senate race and that we don't have 3 Tulfos anymore strengthens the possibility that Rafi Tulfo will remain as one of the favorites. And as you correctly implied here, it looks like one of the options that President Marcos may have is to support an independent-minded and technically independent senator and candidate like Rafi Tulfo. That could be an option for him. But who will be Rafi Tulfo's vice president? Maybe Martin Romualdez? Maybe that could be an option. Or maybe someone from the progressive side plus Rafi Tulfo. That could be a combination. Unless, as I said, maybe he wants to put Sara back in the cabinet and then love. And then, sorry na lang kay Tatay Digong, he's there na in ICC. Do you get what I'm saying? He has no easy options. Kaya the best thing he can do is accept that there were tactical errors, that he has communication gaps, and most importantly, tuloy-tuloy ng effort niya to prove to the Filipino people that he cares, he's willing to put in the work, and tell the story. Storytellers ang dapat mga politicians, especially president. Especially after Digong, we learned that the most powerful thing when it comes to president is the ability to shape the national narrative and to win hearts and minds of people. And Digong was a master of that, and that's why we're still living with his legacy, even if he's no longer in the Philippines for the foreseeable future.
Maybe you should apply as a communication strategist. Oh, good,
I was
good
putting you in
points right
trouble
there.
by saying maybe you should do the podcast interview with him, and then let's see if you're good enough to be his communication strategist.
All right, maraming salamat sa iyo for your analysis, wonderful analysis as usual. We have Richard Haydarian, a resident political pundit, joining us on Morning Matters today. Stay tuned, and Morning Matters will be right back after a short break. Welcome back. You're still watching Morning Matters here on One News. The Department of Justice is set to formally ask the Department of Foreign Affairs to cancel the passport of former presidential spokesperson Harry Roque. This comes after a court issued an arrest warrant against Roque for qualified human trafficking linked to his involvement in the Lucky South 99 Pogo Hub in Porac, Pampanga. The former official is currently in the Netherlands, where he has filed an application for asylum. According to the DOJ, Roque will be considered an undocumented alien if his asylum request is denied.
We know that the Netherlands will not tolerate the commission of crimes that are being charged in this case. Pag wala siyang asylum at nakansel ang passport niya, he will have to be deported.
The Office of the Ombudsman orders Cebu Governor Gwen Garcia to explain her failure to heed its earlier suspension order. It also sought an explanation from the Interior Department on why it has yet to implement the suspension. Garcia is accused of granting a special permit to a firm without an environmental compliance certificate or an ECC from the Environment Department. She ran for a third consecutive 3-year term as Cebu governor, but lost to Pamela Baricuatro. Meantime, the Justice Department has dismissed former President Rodrigo Duterte's complaints against government officials. That's over the arrest of religious leader Apollo Kibuloy in Davao City. The complaints were filed against Police Chief Romel Marbil, former Interior Secretary Benhur Abalos, and 7 other police officers. The DOJ said there was insufficient evidence to prove that the police intentionally damaged the Kingdom of Jesus Christ property during the operation. It also clarified that the police were merely executing a valid arrest warrant and did not violate domicile laws. Don't go away. More matters to discuss right after the break. Keep it here on One News. Welcome back. You're still watching Morning Matters here on One News. A Chinese ship fired water cannon and swiped a BFAR vessel in the West Philippine Sea. The Philippine Coast Guard issued a radio challenge against the Chinese vessel, but still went on harassing BRP Datu Sanday, resulting in damage to its port bow and smokestack. The PCG said they will not reciprocate China's aggression.
Your unsafe maneuvers are in clear violation of your obligations for safe conduct under the 1972 International Regulations.
Still, they claim that Datu Sanday's scientific research mission was successful.
It does not have any strategic gain on our part kung gagayahin natin sila. We just have to maintain our moral high ground, that we are law abider.
Meanwhile, President Bongbong Marcos will push for a binding code of conduct in the South China Sea during the ASEAN summit. The Foreign Affairs Department said Marcos will uphold and promote Philippine interests in ASEAN, such as deepening security and stability. The agency added that Marcos will emphasize the Philippines' position on the West Philippine Sea anchored on international law. The chief executive will attend 9 leaders-level engagements from May 26 to 27 in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. And the Atin Ito coalition is all set for its historic sea concert for peace in the West Philippine Sea. And for that, we have on the show today Atin Ito advocate Kiko Aquino D. He is also a political scientist and executive director of the Ninoy and Cory Aquino Foundation. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having us, Gretchen, and very good to be here.
Okay, so Atin Ito is on its 3rd voyage to the West Philippine Sea. What's different this time from the first 2 journeys?
Well, there's a lot of continuity also. No? We're working with a lot of the fisher folk that Atin Ito supported in its last 2 missions. But what's different is that we're doing a concert at sea. So this is something, honestly, I've never seen before. So it's very exciting. It's very exciting to see how that's going to pan out.
Why a concert?
So I think the real goal of Atin Ito is to make sure that the West Philippine Sea has a permanent interest for the Philippines, not just so our people can advocate for it, but so to see that, so people in the region can see that this is something that Filipinos will not sort of give ground on or give sea on. No? So part of it is doing civilian resupply missions. That was like the first 2 missions. Now this one is a bit more cultural and multicultural. No? So we're featuring talent from the Philippines, but also talent from the region to sort of show that not only is the West Philippine Sea a Philippine interest, but also that everyone here advocates for sort of peaceful resolutions. No? So it's not, there really are conflicting claims over the West Philippine Sea, but we want to show that it's possible to work together, work peacefully, have a good time, and sort of talk to each other, not necessarily through force, but through sort of more universal things like music.
And just for people to recall, the first mission was back in December of 2023, I believe.
That's right.
It was a Christmas voyage for the frontliners in the West Philippine Sea, going around the different islands there. I was part of that, actually. The second one was a trip to Bajo de Masinloc to give fuel and supplies to the fishermen who were fishing near
their traditional sort of fishing
Scarborough.
areas.
That's correct. And this third one, where will it happen?
So my understanding is that we're going to set sail towards the Calayan Islands, and then we will go as far as we can. And then I think we're scheduled to do the concert, live stream it around morning of the 28th, morning of the 28th. That's right.
So kailan kayo aalis?
So yung alis namin madaling araw ng May 27. So it's a long sea route, no. So it's about a day to get to the destination from Palawan, and then it's another 2 days to get back to Manila.
From
El Nido, that's right.
You May 27.
Yes, and I think we're having a pre-departure concert on the 26th in the evening, just
in
to send everyone off. In El Nido,
okay.
that's right.
But are people coming from Manila? I mean, are they taking the ferry going to Palawan?
Yes, so some will be taking the Capitan Felix Oca, the
it's the
ship.
same
This
ship?
is the same ship. That's the first.
So
that's the first
you're
mission.
using
Yes.
the same ship.
Yes, it's the same ship
for this voyage
Yeah,
to.
so that ship will be like the stage,
Pag-asa.
no? So that's where the concert will be shot from, and then there
Is
will
it the
be.
same captain?
I think so. I wasn't there, unfortunately, for the first one, so you might know better. Pero so it's going to be our stage now. I imagine it'll look very different from when you were there. And then there will be smaller ships accompanying us na people will watch from
tinatanong ko
sea.
kung bakit. Kasi nung unang biyahe namin to Palawan, yung kapitan ang nagdesisyon na bumalik kami. So we were heading on to, I think, the Patag and Dawak Islands, but we were already being surrounded by a Chinese Navy ship and Chinese Coast Guard, and him being a civilian captain was not really used to treading the waters with, I mean, that kind of seamanship where you need to know how to maneuver around these kinds of vessels, diba? Kasi he would train pilots or captains rather of these boats, pero yung ganun ibang klaseng skill set yun. Kaya nung na-sense niya na medyo delikado na, tama naman yung decision call, yung judgment call niya to turn around for the safety of everyone. But also that kind of frustrated several of the people on board who wanted to continue on despite the challenges.
As I understand it, there's a smaller vessel that was able to make the delivery.
Totoo, yeah, meron yan.
And I think I think this time around, that was the first voyage, no? So this is still a new thing for both Atenito and the Coast Guard. Na how are we interacting with this civilian sort of entity?
But how is it going to be different this time around? Because that was a sticking point for expedition number 2, where they had fishermen from Zambales to do the maneuvering around and be the captain of that mission para sigurado na makakalusot at yun nga yung nangyari. Pero dito, how is it going to be different?
So I think the first point, so 2 points, no? So one is I think we're much more used to coordinating with the Philippine Coast Guard now. So definitely all of the steps that will be undertaken have been consulted with them, and this is something that we're confident in. We're confident in the plan that we have prepared. And then the second is it's more. The first one was, I think, perhaps a bit more contestable since this was resupplying the BRP Sierra Madre. The second one had to do with significantly less contestable, but still sort of supplying the fisher folks there. This one's just a concert at sea. So for us, the point is to be able to conduct the concert. We'll go as far as we can.
Actually, in the first mission, we didn't really try to resupply the BRP Sierra Madre. It was just to have it in sight and give gifts to the soldiers in the stations in the different islands. Sa Patag, Salawak, etc. But for this concert, it will be held in the vicinity of Pag-asa.
That's the goal. Although again, given because the situation can be very dynamic between the weather and also the Chinese patrols. The idea is basically we can drop anchor. As far as we can, drop anchor, and then
do it in the middle of the sea.
Yes, and then you'll have.
Of course, all of these questions are in light of the recent happenings in the West Philippine Sea, where we just got water cannon. That was marine scientific research done by the BFAR near Sandy K2, where tensions are high. And the Chinese raised their flag. What is the message of this convoy, of this concert, specifically when it comes to that part of the sea, and what do you want to convey?
So specifically, it's that we can resolve differences peacefully. No? So we recognize that there's a contest there. We're firm in the Philippine claim, but I think a big message here is that it's not just Philippine artists who are performing. We have artists from Malaysia, from Indonesia, Japan, South Korea. So we're really coming together to show that while there can be disagreements about who has rights to what, and while different sides can be firm about their beliefs and their rights to the area, we can resolve this without sort of sending, basically bullying ships to intimidate people into doing one thing or another. We can come together, have a good time, and then maybe that can be another track to open up sort of more productive discussions in the area. And again, the second point is we also want to show that, again, the whole idea around Atin Nito is that defending the West Philippine Sea is like a permanent interest of the Filipino people. So that that's something for us to rally around, and it's something for our neighbors to see that this is something that we will be quite firm on. No? That across administrations, across different contexts, this is something that the Filipino people want to fight for. And in fact, I think there's a press event that Atin Nito held yesterday, and one of the things that that was announced was, I think the Akbayan Party will be pushing legislation to push that along. No? So they're looking at setting up like a West Philippine Institute to really make sure that there are people who are focused on defending our rights to our EEZ there. And
a West Philippine Sea bloc in Congress?
Yes, that's right. So beyond Akbayan, we have. I was a supporter of ML party list this last election, and Congressman De Lima.
Who are you looking at? Who's going to be part of that bloc?
Well, this is mentioned by Akbayan party list, and as I understand it, I remember Congresswoman De Lima was also campaigning on having a strong position on the West Philippine Sea during the election. How that pans out, I think we'll see who the rest of the members will be. But I think it's important to remember that, especially compared to the past, where sort of foreign issues don't tend to like rank high as far as concerns for
But what kind of legislation do we need at this point if the adversary is not here in the Philippines but abroad?
Well, it's to make sure that I think there are people who are, regardless of administration, permanently looking at the issue, permanently sort of stating the Philippine position and asserting that regardless of who takes power. No? So again, West Philippine Atin Nito,
have continuity
exactly,
over policy.
Exactly. And because that's not just for our sake, but because it's hard to relate with sort of your international partners. If we want to approach China multilaterally, for instance, we need to have a position on the West Philippine Sea that lasts across administrations to make sure that we're credible partners to other claimants in the area.
Well, Attorney Shell Jokno also proposed teaching kids in schools about the West Philippine Sea.
Yes.
At this point, what do we need? I mean, there has been a comic book released by the Philippine Coast Guard to, somehow laymanize the issue of the West Philippine Sea. But what work needs to be done? In your experience, talking about the West Philippine Sea, do the youth get it? Do people understand when we say territorial sea, EEZ? Ano pang kulang?
Yes, I think, so actually, in terms of people understanding, I was able to watch like a documentary that that was prepared just this year, actually, called like Food Delivery, and it was covering another mission. This was done by the Philippine, I forget, the Philippine Navy, I think, also delivering supplies to people stationed, other soldiers stationed there, and also fisherfolk. And they had this really good drone shot of like one small Philippine fishing boat being chased away by two Chinese Coast Guard vessels. And it's like a chase scene straight from a movie down to the music.
Ito yung may fisherman na nakatayo sa kanyang bangka?
I think so. Pero parang yung striking sa akin was not the close-in shot. It's just they got a drone shot of this really small bangka running away from these big Coast Guard vessels. And for me, it's like you feel how fundamentally wrong this is. No? Na you have two armed ships chasing after a small fishing boat that's been fishing there since time immemorial. So what's going on here? So I think one thing that we can do well to communicate, aside from definitely the facts are important. Like Justice Tony Carpio has done a really good job circulating maps, the old maps that sort of show or that sort of invalidate China's very expansive claim. But I think also telling the story of it,
the relevant stories around it. with a more human face.
With a more human face, and also
and
to
not just
show.
talking about the legalese behind the West Philippine Sea.
Not talking about the legalese, and also showing just how wrong it looks that what's going on is really
But then
bullying
isn't it
there, no?
important also if we challenge the claim of China to get our facts right? I mean, we also don't want to sensationalize this issue too much, right? Like people need to understand ano ba yung atin, ano ba yung hindi.
Right.
According to the law of the sea. So
Right.
that's also a challenge, right?
Yeah, so that's all elements are there. No? So circulating the maps. I think this food delivery film, I think, is very good about in their sort of opening credit scene. They're showing very dynamic maps about this is the shape of the West Philippine Sea. This is what's ours. But I think also, in addition to the facts, we really need to ramp up people's feeling about it, because I think for a lot of us, it can feel quite distant from us. It's happening at one side of our country. China.
I feel it
very
was
abstract.
not a strong election campaign message. I mean, standing up for the West Philippine Sea did not get Francis Tolentino, for one, a win in the Senate.
Well, I think that we can assess that differently. No? So I think what my takeaway is, I think we need to put out a positive message rather than a negative one. So we've seen candidates who were sort of wavering in the West Philippine Sea that got a lot of heat. They got elected, but you had Akbayan performing very, very well, and they're like one of the main proponents of the West Philippine Sea. In the case of Senator Tolentino, while later on he sort of adopted a very pro-West Philippine Sea policy, I don't think he's been consistent in that, right? And maybe that also comes up. Maybe that doesn't. That sort of track record across administrations, that might affect as well. So I think what we've learned is from this election is we need to put out a positive message. Don't focus so much on people who are saying na
Yun ang natutunan ng ML, ng Akbayan.
This is my view. I don't know if that's the
As an
overall
Aquino,
postmortem.
oh, by the way, tito mo si Bam Aquino.
Yes. We're so happy for him.
Did the result surprise you? I mean, him coming at number 2.
Yeah, absolutely. It surprised me. It surprised him, and I follow surveys quite closely, so it surprised me in particular.
What did he change in his campaign that you think was crucial?
Gosh, it'll be really hard to unpack like all of that, no. But
malaki ang bubog ng ng sambayan na natin, no, dito sa Aquino Marcos rivalry.
Yeah, so I think it's a whole bunch of things. So definitely he really put out there that free college education was a big part of his advocacy. He had the track record pushing for it, and at the same time we're facing a situation where we're in the middle of an education crisis. You have a government that slashed the education budget. So I think people saw that was problematic and saw Bam as someone speaking to that problem. Definitely his track record as he was the campaign manager of Leni Robredo in 2022. So he had the bona fides of that side of our electorate, and definitely I think one of the other things we're seeing is I think people are. I think what's clear is that there's a lot of dissatisfaction with President Marcos, right? And people are looking for an alternative, and they see that perhaps in Bam, in Senator Kiko as well. He performed he also outperformed the surveys. So.
Do you see him as a possible standard bearer of the opposition in 2028, or is it Risa?
So my self-interest will collide with my political training here. Because my self-interest is that I don't really like having relatives in Malacanang. It's a very stressful experience, right? But in terms of performing well in a senatorial election, that has people start talking when that happens.
So it's Risa Hontiveros.
For me, that's the one that I really hope. I was very hopeful when she mentioned that she was opening to running in a few days ago. So, I as much as I respect Bam and I think he will do excellently in Senate, it is very stressful to have relatives in Malacanang.
How about you? Why didn't you do politics?
Exact same reason, right? So I was a college student when my Tito Noy was president, and while I think he did a lot of good work, it was a stressful time for the family. And I don't necessarily want to go through that again.
Well, you're still meddling in politics in a different way.
So for me, it's advocate where you can advocate, right? So if the red line is public office, then let's be involved
and
wherever
academia,
else we can.
Of course. Okay.
Right.
On a final note, how can people watch the concert? Will internet be good in the middle of the sea? Did you invest in a maritime Starlink for that?
Yeah, so we've been working on this for months. So I think this is something we're quite confident we'll be able to pull off. The concert will be live streamed in our Facebook page, so the Atenito Facebook page, and we'll also be cross-posting it like with our allied groups. We'll be
What date?
cross-posting it to
What
make
date again?
So this will be in the morning of February, May 28th. So
Okay.
this will be in the morning. Yes.
Antayin namin sa page ng
ng atin ito. And we'll try to get it out as many places as well.
Alright, okay, mag-ingat kayo sa inyong voyage.
Salamat.
At sana walang any untoward incident with the Chinese Coast Guard and the Navy. We have Kiko Aquino D, closing our week. Atin ito advocate and executive director of the Ninoy and Cory Aquino Foundation. Of course, let's tune in to that concert this coming May 28th.
May 28th.
That wraps up today's episode of Morning Matters. We hope we've given you the right start to your morning. Let's go ahead and make the day matter. My name is Gretchen Ho. We are One News, all sides, all the time.